So welcome everybody, and we're really blessed to have this wonderful special and recently retired Thomas. So thank you, Thomas.
Bless your heart. Thank you. Hi. I am so blessed to be with you this morning. This afternoon. I wrote down something a while back, and I was just looking it over to see if what did I say that I wanted to say? But the thing is that life comes through us in every moment. So I try to just be open to really what's there. But I think there are some interesting things I did say here, so I might go back to it. But I was just thinking about the reading about I came to bring light to the world. So I'm going to say a little bit about my life and creativity, which is a very big part of my life. And I think of it, as I was listening to that, I thought, the creativity is light. It does open the world in a sense, or does open us to the world, and through our imagination and what we create, what we make. And so I wrote down a few lines here that we're often in our lives looking for something to fill us, but not truly understanding that we're already filled. So we come here with that light already. We don't have to actually look around for it, but it is us. Actually, I should even say it's not. It doesn't come through us. It comes as us. And so what's happening around the world, or what's happening in our past, or what may happen in the future, are such tiny matters, as Emerson says, compared to what's happening within us. And so to me, that's the creativity, that's the light, that's the expression, that's the truth. The truth of where we are and who we are and how we are. And the creative power transforms our lives. So if something is going on, if something is happening that's challenging, let's say, you could do something creative and it changes your perspective and your perception of what's happening. And it could be that you make a pie. It's the creative, it doesn't matter what you create, actually. It's that in the process of that creation, you have changed, you have transformed. And it's a ripple effect, and it goes out into other people and transforms their lives. Carl Jung saw creativity as a bridge between conscious and unconscious realms of the mind. That is so interesting to me, because there's so many parts of us. There's the spirit world of us, there's the mind of us, there's the heart of us, there's the physical body of us, and they're all connected through creative thinking, through creative expression. I love this about Martha Graham. She said that creativity, this is what she said about creativity, there's a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that translates through you into action. And because there is only one you in all of time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist. That's really something special about each individual person on this planet that has this sort of unique, divine element of the force within us, that only we can express it in a certain unique way, and the world needs that. And if it doesn't get it, it's lost forever. The divine creator inspires boundless imagination, because of course creating is the whole point. That's how we got here. That's how everything got here. That's how those benches got here. Everyone had a creative thought about it first, and then here it is. Just like us, we were born. Somebody had a creative thought with that. Somebody had an imagination about that, and then here we are. So Jesus taught using the imagination in parables, in metaphors, and the Gospels sometimes, are described as creative, restorative, transformational gifts. Transforming brokenness into something new, taking whatever we've got and making something out of it. It's such a wonderful metaphor to really see our lives like that. And in some gifted way, that happened to me as a child. I was adopted into a family that was extraordinarily musical. Now, there's all this nurture versus nature thing. I don't know if it was I don't know how I came about that. But I grew up with music everywhere, every day. It was our lives were really revolved around music. My dad was a musician and conductor and singer and all that. And so as a little boy, my brother and I had these toys, we played with toys, and the little people, I would create performances with them. I would kind of force my brother to let me use his people to be in my shows. But I don't know if he really liked that, but he went along because he was younger. And in a way, though, it was teaching me my whole life, which has been that. Not only bringing people together on stage, but on the stage of life, it's been the same type of bringing people together, in a sense, to do these performances, to live life in a way that is transformative and, in a sense, even transcendent. When I was in college, I went to SUNY Purchase, and the dance company of the school, we were invited to International Dance Festival in Macau and Hong Kong, my senior year. And so we're in Macau, which is at that time was Portuguese colony, right next to Hong Kong, across the water there. And we were meeting all these people, all these new people, people different than us, cultures different than us, languages different than us. And at one point we were in a dance studio. It was really a gym in a dance studio. And the company there, the Dragon Dance Company of Macau, was kind of hosting us after the sort of the evening's meal. And it was late at night. It probably was like midnight already. And it was hot. It was middle of summer, so it's hot there. Anyway, at one point, for some reason, I got up and went to a piano that was over like that in the corner. And I started playing a song, Tomorrow, from Annie. And it changed everything in the room. I shouldn't say it solidified the feeling in that room of the unity between we Americans and the Chinese who were there hosting us. And anyway, to make a long story short, we did the shows and everything, went back to school. When I graduated, the Dragon Dance Company invited me to join their company. Now, you could say that because I went to the piano and I gave this gift of song, this creativity, this light, that it sparked something in the director of the company to want to bring that light, that creativity back. I see this as a way that we can live our lives, to be able to bring your light again and again and again in whatever place you're in. And I don't know what told me to go over to there and do that. We were dancing, and so it had nothing to do with the piano. But anyway, I went, and I lived in Macau for that year or two, and it was an extraordinary experience for me. One of the incidents that happened during that time was, and I've told this story many times, about being in China, in a sort of remote area of China near Mongolia, sort of. And when I was finished the performances, I decided to stick around on my own and travel around. I used to do that a lot, actually, when I performed with companies in Europe and then Asia. And whenever we were finished with a tour or something, I stayed on and just kind of tried to blend in to the people there, although I often didn't really blend in, but they were gracious. So anyway, I got on a train. I didn't know where it was going because I couldn't read Chinese. And after a couple of hours, I just got off, and I was somewhere. I mean, I never think I'm lost. I just think I don't know where I am. But it's not like I'm not on the planet. I am somewhere, and people live there, and they know where they are. So it's like I don't feel. One time I'm on a sidetrack here. One time I got lost in Tokyo for 5 hours, and the friend that was with me was like, "Oh my God, we're lost." Well, we're not lost. We just don't know where we are. But if we knew this place, we would feel like we weren't lost. So anyway, so back to the Chinese story. So I get off the train. I saw this little girl. She was about 7 or 8 years old, and she was sitting on the ground, and she had a stick, and she was just kind of making these doodles or circles in the sand and the dirt. And this area was quite remote. There were houses were built out of like tin against this mountain kind of thing. And there was no electricity there, I don't think. And there probably wasn't running water either. And anyway, and I didn't see anyone but this little girl. I don't know where the people were. And she was petrified when she saw me, and she stood up and she was just like shaking so much that I don't think she could move out of her spot. And, there probably hadn't been many foreigners, if any, in this area. And certainly nobody whose skin was dark like this. I could have been a Martian or something to her. And I sat down and I slowly moved myself over to where she was, and I picked up her stick and I started to doodle like that. And I could feel she was looking over my shoulder at what I was doing. And eventually she sat down and started doing that with me. And then one of the train came back going the other way, and I thought I should get back on there, go back. So I waved goodbye and whatnot. And we never said a word. I mean, we never said a word verbally. But a few years after that, or maybe a year or two after that, I used to do work with a company in Martha's Vineyard every summer, and I was up there sitting on the beach, and I was thinking about this little girl, and I thought, I felt more connected to that little girl than I do to some of the people I see every day. It was such a profound level of connection that it inspired me to want to give that feeling, that understanding, that awareness to other people. How could other people feel this? Really understand we're all one people. I mean, we say it all the time, but what does that mean in our daily lives, really? But I understood what it meant. Totally. There were so many potential barriers between me and this little girl, the culture, the language, male, female, adult, child. I mean, there were just so many reasons that we're not supposed to connect. But oh my God, did we connect? So I thought about this idea of poems because I write a lot of poetry. And I thought, if people wrote poetry to each other, they could kind of touch each other in a very profound way, meaningful way, without ever having even met. And so I started writing to people I had met when I was doing all this traveling. And I said, listen, write 2 lines of poetry and send it to me. And I'll put it together in a big poem and then send it back out to everybody. And that way you will have touched by everyone, every other line or whatever. So people started doing it. I mean, I guess I didn't think they wouldn't, but you never know. And so I got hundreds of letters, because people were telling their friends and their friends' friends. I remember there were these farmers in China and student kids in India, and a soldier in Nicaragua sent me a poem, and he said, in Nicaragua, writing poetry is a pastime. And so he had all the guys in his platoon or whatever write poems and send to me, or the 2 lines of poetry. Some famous people wrote. Jimmy Carter wrote. Dalai Lama wrote. President Mitterrand of France at the time wrote. And then one day I get a letter from Mother Teresa, who I'd written to and asked her to write poem. And she said in her letter, I'll paraphrase, something like, I don't know how to write poetry. I'm not gifted in that way, but this is what I think peace is. And of course, it was the most beautiful poetry you can imagine. And then one day, I was living in New York at that time, and I come home to my apartment and I see this little light blue envelope in all these in the mail. The mail was like a lot every day because people were sending stuff, but this one somehow stuck out. It was very fancy paper and whatnot, and I turn it over, and embossed on the back says Leonard Bernstein. Now, Leonard Bernstein was one of my childhood heroes, like the specials on TV and the orchestras and learning about instruments. And I mean, I grew up with like Leonard Bernstein, West Side Story, the whole thing. So I had to sit on the stoop for a moment because I was just overwhelmed, even though all these other famous people had, also. Anyway, I open it up and he wrote a whole page poem. And then he said, I would love to hear more about what this project is, what you're doing. So I met with him one day for lunch right outside Lincoln Center. And he said something to me that changed the trajectory of my life. He said, the artist is the person with the vision that moves society forward. It hit me like reality. And it made me think about a scripture in Proverbs 29 somewhere, Proverbs 29, that says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And I thought, oh my God, that's what I got to be doing. And it shifted my whole thinking about my trajectory as a performer, as a performing artist, and what my goals were, although I didn't really have goals, I don't think, but what my goals were, what I wanted to do with my life, it all shifted in that moment, really. And I realized that the gift that I was given, this light, this creativity, was really about sharing and opening something. It wasn't just, it was opening me, but in that opening, it was opening others. And that was the real purpose. That was the real reason to have it. And so when I was on my way to graduate school, actually, right, about the next year at the University of Utah, and I started a group called Dance Art, and we were kind of a fine arts student group of dancers and musicians, actors, poets, and it started because earlier that year, the Berlin Wall came down, and I was watching 2020, and they were doing a thing on Romania, and they had found like 10,000 orphans. It was just overwhelming to watch this, and some huge percentage of them had HIV, and my heart just sank. So I thought, oh, we can do something about this. As I had been learning my whole time in that recent time, that my creativity was about transformation, and so I had no thought that we couldn't do something. I was just like, yes. The next morning, I called the State Department, and I said, I'm a student at the University of Utah. We want to do something to help the Romanian orphans that have HIV, blah, blah, blah. The guy says to me, oh, there's a woman in Detroit that's starting a program called Save the Romanian Orphans, something. And he gave me her number. I call her up. And of course, we didn't have cell phones yet then, so it was just dial-up. So anyway, I call her, and she says, oh, I'm working with World oh, sorry, I forget well, it's a big organization like UNICEF or, oh, what was it? I can't believe I forgot that already. World something. Anyway, World, no, World, whatever. It was it doesn't matter what it was. But anyhow, but I'm just like thinking, oh my God, I'm older now. I can't remember stuff. But whatever. The name doesn't matter. The moment matters. So anyway, she connects me to them, and they're working with Doctors Without Borders in France who are going over there to take care of some of these kids. So we end up buying 10,000 of what back then were the little kits that you could use to test for HIV. And so we did this community-wide performance thing, inviting people to perform and working with kids and whatnot. And it was an outdoor something or other. Anyhow, we raised enough money to buy these 10,000 kits. And it really transformed me, because then I realized that this creativity thing, really had a strong impact, not just on me. I mean, I love to be singing and dancing, but it wasn't just that. It was expressing something that touched other people and moved them into action. And so I thought, oh yeah, so we kept doing different social issues, whatever, with this dance art thing until I graduated, and then I changed the name to Peace Art. And in Peace Art, we were traveling around the world doing exactly those kinds of things. We were going to places where there was usually some conflict of some kind, and we would work with people in the community. So it wasn't that we were, getting artists together. We were actually getting just the people in the neighborhoods and in those communities together to create dance and poetry and music, and as a collective. And it was through the process of that collective unifying creativity that they began to see beyond their barriers and their structured conflicts. I should say manufactured conflicts. So anyway, this went on for quite a while in my life until I came back to Rochester. But I guess I will say that everywhere we went, and it was, Taiwan, Thailand, England, all over the place. Yes, the cultures were different, and in a way the people were different, but they weren't. And it goes back to the little girl that I met in China who didn't have any barrier with me in reality. The barriers were all things that were manufactured. They really didn't exist. Just the two human beings who really were part of the same creative force, the same light. That's what really existed. And to be able to connect directly to it is transformational. And so, I guess I could go on and on, but I think my time is probably up. I will tell one more story. This was in Sandpoint, Idaho. Sandpoint, Idaho is a small little town up near up way north in Idaho, right close to Washington State. And when I was asked to come bring my peace art work there, the person told me, well, the next town over, Coeur d'Alene, was headquarters to Aryan Nation and all kinds of stuff like that. And, if you don't want to come, we certainly understand. But I thought to myself, well, no, I don't really want to go there. But all this stuff I've been sort of preaching, maybe I need to go see if it really works. So I went, and I was working in middle schools. And the first day I went into the school, the students stood about 50 feet from me. They wouldn't come any closer. Now, I did understand a couple of things. There was no people of color in this town, and most of those kids had never seen a Black person in real life. This was not that long ago. This was early 2000s, I think. And so I did understand it, and I'd been around the world a few times. I knew the learning that went into fear about things you don't know. So I did understand it. And so I just went on as, teaching as though they were right here, and they were way over there, but I just went on as if that didn't matter. And eventually, day by day, they actually came closer and closer and closer. So it was fine. And at the end, it was, they were hugging me. Their parents were hugging me. That actually was even more of a triumphant moment. But I never saw any of this sort of skinheads or Aryan Nation. I never, and I kind of was looking for it, just so I was like, oh, I got to try this out. Like, how am I going to react? And so the last day, I was walking around down their main street there, kind of window shopping, and a couple of blocks down, I saw I'll call them skinheads, but I don't know if that's really, that's just kind of the name that I kind of put on them. But they looked like that, and so I thought, oh my God. And my first thought was, I got to get in the store and hide myself. But then something in me, that creative force, I think, said, no, stay right here. There's a transformational moment about to happen. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know that. I didn't have words for that at the time. There was a feeling, a sensation. And I let them come right to me, and they did. And they surrounded me, trying to intimidate me, which they did. They were teenagers, really, probably 16, 17-year-old kids. And I was very intimidated by them. And then I said to them first, I really have loved being in your town. I was here teaching the kids at the school, and I'm from New York, and this was really a fascinating place to be. And they stopped walking, and one said, "You're from New York? What is it like there?" Another one said, "Oh, I want to go to New York." And all of a sudden, we were in a conversation. I said, "Well, what do you want to do when you finish high school? What do you want to be?" And the next thing you know, we're just chatting as if we'd been friends forever. And I'll conclude with this. Often what we think life is not what life is. What we think is what we've learned, what we've been taught. But that doesn't mean that's what life is. It just means that's what we know. There's so much more beyond what we know. And I think if we can keep an openness about that idea, that concept, that what we know is just this, but what there is this. And in a way, we're not this. What we are is this. To live that way does require courage in a sense, although it's only requiring courage, I think, because we have to unlearn what we think is true. I think in the process of creating, we discover what is true. And that is what really matters, not just to us, but our relationship to everyone else. So thank you so much for having me here today and letting me reminisce. And bless you.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I welcome everybody to join at the